A dollar store can look like one of the cheapest places on earth. Everything feels like a bargain. A dollar here, a few dollars there. But here's the strange part. Some of the products you buy at a dollar store can actually cost you more than buying them at Walmart. So how does a store built around cheap prices become a multi-billion-dollar business? The answer has almost nothing to do with selling things for a dollar. It starts with something much more powerful: convenience. Think about the last time you needed a few things quickly, maybe snacks, batteries, cleaning supplies, or something for dinner. Would you drive 20 minutes to a massive Walmart, walk through hundreds of aisles, wait in line, or stop at the tiny store 5 minutes away? That's exactly where the dollar store business model gets interesting. Instead of trying to beat Walmart at everything, companies like Dollar General and Dollar Tree built thousands of smaller stores designed for one specific purpose: the quick shopping trip. And they put those stores in places where the competition is often weak: rural towns, small communities, and neighborhoods where full-size grocery stores aren't always nearby. In fact, a huge portion of Dollar General's stores are located in towns with relatively small populations. In some communities, the nearest alternative can be miles away, and when you're the only convenience store around, you don't need to be the cheapest, you just need to be close. But that's only the first trick, because once you're inside the store, something else happens. You see a product marked at just a few dollars. It feels cheap. But here's the catch. You're not always comparing prices. You're comparing the numbers on the price tag. Imagine 2 boxes of aluminum foil. One costs $1, the other costs $3. The $1 box looks like the obvious bargain. But what if the dollar store box contains dramatically less foil? Suddenly, that cheap product isn't necessarily cheaper at all. This is one of the most important ideas behind the dollar store model. Small packages can make low prices look even lower. Customers often think, it's only $1, but the store is thinking, how much profit can we make from this shelf space? And that difference is enormous, because the customer sees the price, the company sees the margin, and then there's another trick hiding in plain sight: the layout of the store. Walk into many dollar stores and you won't necessarily find the products you came for immediately. Seasonal products and attention-grabbing items can be placed near the entrance. Why? Because the first few seconds matter. You came in for toothpaste, then you see Halloween decorations, then snacks, then a toy, then something you didn't know you needed 5 seconds ago, and suddenly your $5 shopping trip becomes $15. That's not an accident. Retailers understand a simple psychological principle: the more products you see, the more opportunities there are to buy something. And dollar stores are particularly good at turning small purchases into bigger baskets. But there's an even bigger reason these stores can make so much money. They don't need giant stores. A Walmart supercenter requires enormous amounts of space: more shelves, more inventory, more employees, more electricity, more maintenance, more everything. A typical dollar store can operate in a much smaller footprint. That means fewer employees are needed to keep the store running, and fewer employees means lower labor costs. So, while a giant retailer is spending heavily just to operate a massive store, the dollar store model can keep its costs much tighter. And this creates a powerful equation: small stores plus low operating costs plus thousands of locations equals enormous scale. But there's one more weapon that doesn't get nearly enough attention: private label products. Instead of relying entirely on famous brands, dollar stores can sell products under their own brands. Why does that matter? Because when you control the brand, you have more control over the product, packaging, sourcing, and pricing. Customers aren't necessarily walking in demanding a specific brand. They're thinking, I need something cheap that works. And that's exactly what the dollar store model is designed to provide. But there's a darker side to this strategy, because keeping prices extremely low can mean making compromises. Some inexpensive products may use cheaper materials, and certain categories, especially electronics, children's products, and other safety-sensitive items, can carry additional risks if quality control is poor. That doesn't mean every dollar store product is unsafe, but it does reveal something important about the business. The entire model depends on controlling costs. And when your competitive advantage is price, every extra dollar matters. Now here's where the story gets controversial. Dollar stores often expand into communities where people have fewer shopping options. On the surface, that sounds like a good thing. A nearby store means people don't have to travel long distances for basic supplies. But there's a potential downside. When a large chain enters a small community, an independent grocery store may struggle to compete. And if that local grocery store eventually closes, the community can lose more than just a business. It can lose access to fresh food, it can lose local jobs, and it can lose locally owned businesses that have been part of the community for years. That's why critics argue that dollar stores can create a strange economic cycle. They enter communities because residents need affordable, convenient shopping. But their presence can sometimes make it harder for other businesses to survive. And that brings us back to the biggest misconception about dollar stores. They're not really selling dollars. They're selling something much more valuable: convenience, perception, and repetition. A customer doesn't need to spend $100. They just need to spend $5, then come back next week and spend another $8, then another $12. Multiply that by millions of customers and thousands of stores. Suddenly, those tiny purchases become a massive business. That's the real genius of the dollar store model. You don't need customers to spend a lot, you just need them to keep coming back. Because in retail, billions aren't always made from huge purchases. Sometimes, they're made from millions of tiny ones, and that's the part most people miss. The store doesn't need to make you feel like you're spending a lot. It just needs to make spending feel easy. Cheap-looking prices, convenient locations, small impulse purchases, and thousands of locations, all working together. That is how a store built around the idea of cheap can become a multi-billion-dollar business. And maybe the biggest lesson is that in business, value isn't always about what something costs. Sometimes, value is about how much you're willing to pay for what you actually get. And that's exactly where the dollar store business model gets its power. Millions of tiny purchases can create billions.